Podcast 232. The Interplay of Illiteracy, Theology, Cultural Literacy, and Media Arts. Copyright 2025. ISBN 978 976 9771994. Greetings. I am Dr. William Anderson Gittins, DD, and today I'll be talking about the intricacies of illiteracy, stressing that it goes beyond simply not being able to read or write. This view is supported by explorerpsychology.com. My emphasis draws attention to aspects of culture, spirituality, and the arts that are sometimes disregarded because of a concentration on technical definitions of literacy. However, my cognitive abilities argue that reading plays a major role in identity and dignity, and wonder why these deeper links are often overlooked. When viewing people who are not allowed to study sacred texts or participate in traditional storytelling, empowerment and belonging are important issues. A person's confidence and self-perception within their society may be seriously harmed by this exclusion, which may cause them to avoid situations that might reveal their written language impairments, which could be especially harmful. According to proliteracy.org, there is a stigma associated with illiteracy, despite the fact that structural problems like poverty or educational gaps account for a large portion of it rather than any personal shortcomings. Ironically, inspireculture.org claims that it's a fantastic argument because oral traditions in some places actually have rich forms of literacy that aren't often acknowledged. In general, oral cultures convey values and history just as successfully and occasionally even more vividly than written ones, according to inspireculture.org. But when the dominant culture establishes the standards, those kinds of facts are often ignored. This brings me to another point that makes me use my cognitive abilities to consider how theology fits into all of this. Through the lens of my Doctor of Divinity, I've found that when we discuss theology, there is a strong moral desire to uplift others. For example, references to bearing one another's burdens in Scripture, such as Galatians 6:2, make me consider whether or not seeing literacy as a spiritual calling alters how communities react. bradeast.org reports that early Christianity, oral traditions, and catechetical schools were among the early religious organizations that overcame illiteracy. Because only 10 to 15% of people in medieval Europe were literate, illiteracy persisted and few people attended monastery schools. Early Christians relied on writers to learn the Bible. The goal of the catechetical schools was to educate adults by utilizing the literate minority. In pre-literate societies, oral traditions were essential for comprehending religious texts. These customs demonstrate how early religions overcame illiteracy by depending on educated people and oral transmission. They promoted reading so that individuals may obtain religious texts independently. When you think of literacy as a part of spiritual dignity, it becomes more of a shared journey rather than a box to be ticked, almost like a shared obligation, according to spiritualmeaningacademy.com. Furthermore, as stated in numberanalytics.com, there are historical instances of theological knowledge being applied to advance social change, such as Sojourner Truth. The Institute for God.edu states, leaders with a strong theological background usually guide their communities with more confidence and empathy. However, it's noteworthy that, according to learn.legionnaire.org, is our ignorance of the Bible at an all-time high? A lack of theological literacy may lead to more bias and miscommunication amongst groups, according to socialwork.institute. When people are unable to immediately engage with their own or other people's opinions, they often feel cognitive dissonance, which leads to a tense and unpleasant state. People are unable to directly engage with their own or other people's opinions. Instead, communication just stops. According to simplypsychology.org, cultural literacy is crucial in this environment because it promotes cultural concord and personal development, similar to learning a new language for successful cultural navigation. It is becoming more and more important to comprehend other customs and histories. Through nuanced understanding, cultural literacy can reveal its revolutionary potential and have a tremendous impact on illiterate people. If one does not understand the stories and symbols that make up a community, education could be alienating. For example, because their culture isn't represented in the curriculum, pupils appear to disconnect in some circumstances, according to hepgse.harvard.edu. It is more crucial to translate meaning than just words. As a cultural practitioner and media arts specialist, I have discovered that when I add local music, stories, or rituals, learning immediately becomes to life in the classroom. This is confirmed by blogs.euroregon.edu. Media arts and photojournalism successfully convey narratives that speak to people on an innate level despite language boundaries. Regardless of a person's reading level, captivating images can captivate them and inspire them to create or tell their own stories. This brings up the topic of how visual storytelling and media arts create new literacy paths that enable those who are frequently marginalized to participate meaningfully. Have you seen situations when visual media encourage a love of reading or storytelling? Think about Dorothea Lange's image of the migrant mother, which can be found at en.wikipedia.org, migrant mother. Many people, even those who don't read subtitles, can understand a meaningful story from a single striking image. And culture, people can express their identities and cultures through it, which makes them feel valuable and inspires them to make their own versions or interact with the material. This interaction is an excellent example of visual literacy, which goes beyond simple observation to include interpretation, drawing connections, and challenging authenticity. Media arts skills are essential in today's media-rich society, especially for underprivileged people. By enabling people to express their cultural identities, these arts empower people in addition to facilitating education. When someone's story is captured on camera or in photographs, it boosts their sense of identity and self-worth and represents empowerment rather than merely knowledge. A variety of tactics are needed to combat illiteracy, with a focus on integrating educators, artists, and religious leaders to alter communities. Making education relevant to local culture and global principles is the main opportunity. But creating true teamwork and bridging institutional divides are difficult tasks that frequently call for a driven leader. According to Nature.com, successful community initiatives that include a variety of participants, such as musicians and storytellers, demonstrate the need for group participation in order to bring about change. This strategy promotes a movement that values each person's individuality, using literacy as a link to empowerment and equity. The quest of literacy is inextricably related to self-expression, inclusivity, and dignity, inspiring more communities to embrace innovative cooperation. Finally, e-publication 394 captures and frames the interplay of illiteracy, theology, cultural literacy, and media arts. Copyright 2025. ISBN 978-976-97-71994. I believe there are a few noteworthy ones. First, we must acknowledge that illiteracy results in serious shame and isolation that extends far beyond reading. Second, theology provides a framework for comprehending literacy so as social duty and a spiritual goal that promotes harmony. See Proverbs 4:7. Third, according to Atlantis Press, and possibly most easily available, media arts are extremely potent and accessible means for self-expression and empowerment, particularly for people who are marginalized. In the end, a cooperative society that integrates religion, culture, and the arts is needed to successfully address this issue. God bless.